Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Uncle Sham Podcast. If you're hearing this now, the actual first one actually hasn't been released by the time of recording this, so we actually haven't had a chance to read any of your comments. But still, we're here today, and we're going to just start off this very special podcast episode 2, with a very special song. It is our own song, so we're going to sing it right now. 72 degrees. 72 degrees on this earth, 72 degrees, 72 degrees and this hurts.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh, there we go. I think we've I accidentally annoyed someone. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. My name is Forklift.
And I'm the Caterpillar.
And
today...
Oh, yeah, and today we're going to be talking about relationships because we promised to do that in the first episode, even though there's no one actually at home keen for this one. Maybe there is. I'll release them after each other to make it seem like this one was intentionally done off of audience suggestion. No, actually, we talked about it. I don't even know where to get started. I better not kick around this cord too much, though. Well, I haven't seen you in a week. How has life been?
Life... Pretty epic, actually. Bit busy, but pretty good, Working away, studying, doing various activities with different organisations and trying to be active in the community, but,
You're an active dude.
Yeah.
You're an active... You're out there doing the things Man's on active mode.
Man's out here doing stuff.
Man switched to active mode and went bananas.
Exactly. I love
Man went ananas on that.
Man went crazy on this
Man didn't have to wake up to be rising, if you know what I mean.
Mandem always rising, never waking.
Mandem didn't have to press start just to get going, famski.
Mandem didn't have to have breakfast to be eaten.
Man didn't have to be swallowing to be chewing, if you know what I mean.
Mandem didn't have to be working as a waiter to be serving, you know what I mean?
Man didn't have to serve so hard on the last thingsies, but you don't know the thing if the man didn't want to chat BS on a Dougal fontan.
My man them always like a good youth, he's serving like in Wimbledon,
This is how Canadian people speak. Yo, I'm out here with a couple of Mikey dudes. We're just doing a little podcast though, but if you don't have the real tingle bob, then you ain't gonna be riding on the 124, if you know what I done know.
You ain't got the shingle bob, you ain't got the bingle bam.
Man's got a little inskis on the front, son. If a man's gonna go inzy on the gonzoot, but if you don't blaze up, then you ain't a real Cali boy, if you know what I mean. It's a Vancouver thing. I'm repping the straight Vanny 1-2 on the 045.
If man leave his mom's in the hoods.
Well, how do Australians sound? Nah, mate, if you're just drumming up there and you're banging on out, and then, you get a pull, bang the ringer out of it a couple times around, and then, you get a little bit of an Aussie vibe. I don't know how I brought in Aussie onto that, but yeah. I don't know. Is that what Australians sound like to Americans?
Definitely.
Welcome to the relationship podcast of Uncle Sam. We're a very serious show, as you can tell.
Yeah, Uncle Sam is now what we're called.
Uncle Sham? So relationships. Oh, yeah, how was your week? I wasn't really listening.
It was good. We'll leave it at good. How was your week?
It was boring. It was okay. I got a couple of things that I have to fix up, but it was all right. I did see June again. I think I've seen June in the theater 3 times, and the third time it's just as good as the first 2 times. There is actually nothing that beats watching a movie like that for the first time, but the second time you do notice more, and by the third time you kind of know the movie like the back of your hand, but you can still enjoy how it all goes down, and you see a lot more things. I saw a lot more things and remembered a lot more when I watched it the third time than I did the first 2 times, but yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty mad. Sounds like a good film, it's well rated. I've heard very good things about it. I'm very keen to see it when I get less busy.
Yeah, there you go then. So
relationship, we'll start off what is a good relationship?
Oh, what's a good relationship? Just two people who are just kind of mutually there for the sake of the relationship, as if the relationship was another living organism. And the way that they kind of interact with each other is how they maintain the gist of the relationship. They just keep it rolling, not because they have to keep it rolling in a way of like this is like some kind of obligation and like they are too scared to leave. It's more like they just keep it rolling because they're good. They're just having a good time and they like each other and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So with a good relationship, like what are some very like visual things, or what, some hallmarks of a good relationship? Like if you see someone doing something,
Yeah, the thing about relationships is they really do differ cross-culturally. So like a relationship in Australia in the West is going to look very differently to a Somalian relationship and a relationship in India or South America, something like that. But I guess the West, we do have our kind of four chemical types. I will have to look them up. Could you look them up?
Are you referring to testosterone, estrogen, serotonin, and dopamine?
Yes, there we go. And I guess like it kind of relates to how those fit into each other. So like a testosterone person goes with an estrogen person quite well. And then I think dopamine kind of go with each other. And then it's the serotonin. Is it the serotonin?
Yes.
Who do they go with? Estrogen?
Serotonin go with serotonin.
With other serotonins?
Yeah. So, your testosterone and your estrogen are your two main sexual hormones.
Yeah, but they can actually be, they don't have to be dominant
no, they don't have to be.
in your kind of brain chemistry.
But
they generally are. They generally are.
Well, because they are neurotransmitters, just like serotonin and dopamine, they're a form of neurotransmitter.
Yeah.
So obviously, when you have just chemically, estrogen and testosterone are compatible with each other due to the interaction between humans when they can, obviously censor a person with a compatible hormone structure like that.
And that's a scent thing, really.
It's based
like
on anything.
And also it's a personality thing, because if you've got a testosterone personality, it's more about it's a lot of it's like strength, physical strength, what the actual testosterone chemical does to the body, strength and hair growth.
Yeah.
But also people who are high in testosterone just kind of, they have a very sharp attention span that kind of just leads them to just be sitting there and focusing on something for an incredible amount of time. And people with like the testosterone chemical brain, they'll just be like focused on something forever. Like when it comes to like me, I'm pretty testosterone, so I'm like, I've got things that I just have a wealth of knowledge on, and then there's a whole nother world that I have no clue. It's like people ask me questions about one thing and I can go on for ages. They ask me about another thing and I'm like, I think I'm done. I have no idea. Like I haven't, like that's a general conversation when it's like one of those things of like, do you know anything about this? And I'm like, nope. Because someone asked me like, what's the best internet for gamers? And I'm like, Telstra. And they're like, no, it's not. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to debate this because I have no idea. But yeah, no.
Yeah, I think for, as far as that goes, testosterone it's, I'm not sure how like fully accurate what you're saying is in terms of like
the testosterone
the
personality.
Test.
Yeah, let me look it up. But yeah, do you have any? Yeah, just don't worry. I'm just gonna get you. Keep the audience entertained.
Anyway, because what I'm saying more is like there is a very heterogeneous nature to those with high testosterone levels and those with personalities with high testosterone levels. There's a high heterogeneity. You have the aspect of ADHD, autism, even other just personality styles.
Here's some stuff you can look through there. I haven't read it, so you might have to do it for me.
But yeah, so basically,
what is it saying?
So this is a clinical trial here.
Oh, clinical trial? So this
well, not a clinical trial, sorry, a review, I believe, actually, sorry. But it's based on... Oh, no, it is a clinical trial, actually. So it was basically, they were testing basal plasma testosterone levels.
Okay. So this...
antisocial personality traits.
Basal, as in like basal...
Basal. BASAL.
Oh, okay.
Base level.
So, base level.
Basal. So that means base level.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So yeah, there is a positive correlation between basal plasma testosterone levels and antisocial personality traits.
Which is, can you see how that relates to what I was saying? Like, they'll spend more time dedicated to just doing something rather than going out and socializing.
I guess so. There was
because if it's you got like more testosterone, you've got more you're less social, right?
Fair. I mean, there's a higher relation with the female sex. High testosterone relates to psychoticism, Millen compulsive thinking in both genders, criminal thinking traits in both sexes. Sorry,
That makes sense.
Sex or gender assigned at birth is probably a better term to use. In male sex participants, positive correlation between baseline plasma testosterone levels and Millen antisocial trait, and then Millen hypermania trait.
Hypermania, as in episodes of behaviors that are elevated. I don't know how would you describe?
Hypomania. So
low.
So it's like depressive mania, I believe. But let me just double check.
Okay, see that also makes sense. That kind of correlates to an attitude to want to stay home and do nothing, really.
Yeah. So it's basically hypomania is an elevation of mood.
Elevation of mood. Okay, yeah.
So they may, a person with hypomania may experience irritability.
Yeah.
And it may, include just, the normal symptoms of mania. There are hypomanic episodes, a feature of bipolar type 2, because there's no significant functional impairment. That's where it differentiates itself from mania.
Mm-hmm.
And mania also may have psychotic features, whereas hypomania may not, which is why it's hypo meaning low. So it's a lower.
Okay, so it's so they have less mania.
Yeah, it's essentially, but still, it's
okay.
it's a sort of pre-manic condition in a way,
Yeah.
So I just dropped my phone. That's okay. Anyway.
Yeah. Something going on with your mic. There we go.
So there was also higher, females with higher basal testosterone levels showed higher personality self-destruction traits.
Interesting. So what does that mean? So when you think about a relationship with a girl who's high in testosterone, would that mean that they're more? Would you kind of classify that as someone who might be, because they're self-destructive? Does that pertain to the relationship, or would a relationship help that? Would you be able to assess that now?
Based on what I know about sort of psychology, obviously I'm not an expert in anything like this, but what I know about the biochemical nature and how that relates to psychology and how that can relate to relationships, the self-destructive nature, if it is apparent in a person with high testosterone, because obviously you can. If you have acknowledged those issues, if you truly have those issues, you can just manage them yourself or get treated for them.
So that's something that you do with pharmaceutical drugs.
You can do it pharmaceutically. You can do it the pharmaceutical
meditation.
Drugs. Yeah, you can do it. Cognitive behavioral therapies, also self-help. Not in the weird self-help books, but doing actual things that are good for yourself. But if we're talking about medication, it won't be, increasing estrogen or trying to artificially decrease testosterone. It would be SSRIs, selective serotonin receptor inhibitors. It would be, it would be your medications to treat specific disorders. Like if you were, if you had a manic condition such as bipolar or a borderline personality disorder, then you would be treated with medication. If it was a psychotic disorder, antipsychotic medication. So, if it's apparent in the relationship, it would most definitely affect the relationship. People with self-destructive tendencies,
it kind of goes out to whoever, because it's okay, that makes sense. Shall we look up what estrogen does?
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. If you can find a good study for that
collaborative.
They are, and they also they both target similar receptors at times. Like, for example, in prostate cancer in men, estrogen type A, I believe, is known to either inhibit it or increase it, whereas estrogen type B does the opposite effect.
Wait, okay, so what was that?
So one of the two major types of estrogens inhibits prostate cancer, or
Oh, okay. Interesting.
basically supports pathways that relate to anti-proliferation and the programmed cell death, which is apoptosis. The other major form of estrogens actually increases that. It's known to correlate with anti-apoptotic genes, oncogenic meaning tumor genes.
Yep.
And in some forms of prostate cancer, testosterone highly increases the prostate cancer. It's known as testosterone dependent prostate cancer. You can have
Interesting.
testosterone independent prostate cancer, which is way harder to treat because then you can't just treat it by reducing the testosterone at that area,
Okay.
which is known as like chemical castration. You can use that, similar things to that
Yeah.
to treat it. But so we'll see what the brain chemicals may say. So,
Yeah.
so Helen Fisher is a biological anthropologist.
Based. It's anthropology is great.
Yeah, and basically, Helen Fisher has said that brain chemistry is a major determinant. So dopamine, testosterone are apparently two major roles in a person's drive towards romance, sex, and other rewards, which makes sense because you have your dopamine pathway,
Yeah.
which is, before you're about to do an activity that you're either addicted to or that you're looking forward to, you have a dopamine influx.
Yeah.
Testosterone is known to, people with high testosterone are often associated with higher libido levels,
Fair. Yeah.
etc. So for this one, sorry, I'm just reading. People with different personality types seem to be drawn together. People with active dopamine tend to be reward driven, obviously.
Yeah, and they like each other. That's what I know about.
Yeah,
it.
so those with dopamine types tend to like their own type, as Helen Fisher says.
And do you see that a lot with the people around you and the relationships around you?
Definitely. The ones that work are generally two people who are similar in their reward style.
Yeah, okay.
So they are often trying to seek out novelty, experiences, and they can at times get bored easily. Obviously, depending on, obviously other personality and neurological factors, dopamine doesn't always have to have that effect.
Yeah.
But generally, high dopamine levels will relate to this.
Are you a high dopamine guy?
I would say I'm pretty high with most chemicals in terms of the way it affects my personality.
But you would say you do get bored.
I would say
easy sometimes because I remember when we used to hang out a lot, you would be bored a lot. Is that true?
I think I've been able to navigate that a lot better now. But definitely I think with my studies it's very different. I get so interested with that, but with other sorts of
rec time.
Yeah, with recreation time I can get bored. But then we have serotonin. It's linked with sort of more sociable, more averse to risks, meaning you don't want to seek as many risks. Conscientious. Religion is sometimes associated with high serotonin levels.
Yeah, because it's about socialization.
It's about order and habit and
order
that sort of thing.
and social. Because that's what religion is. It's about order and socialization.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why I'm not the greatest at being a people person who can kind of rile up people and that kind of thing is because I don't know if I have too much serotonin in my system. I think I'm mainly a testosterone dopamine type guy with thinking about order, I do like order, but order for me is just I wish that they built cities better.
Yeah.
And I wish that people behaved better on the road and out walking and in the shops, but I don't know how to fix it. But I wish that they just did, people were a bit better to each other sometimes.
Yeah, very fair.
But
very fair.
order to me and being sociable, I am sociable enough, but I don't think I am the most sociable. What do you think about yourself when it comes to those two factors?
For me, I think I'm a very sociable person. I love people.
I think you probably are high in serotonin. Because you do order a little bit.
I love order. I don't like change too much. I
don't know if social order is something that you kind of itches at you the way it does with me? Because
I think
you are very
definitely,
tolerant to just let people do what they want, whereas I'm always like,
Somewhat,
oh, they're stupid.
Yeah, look,
Like I'm
I
like,
try to keep it contained for like the social aspect, but I definitely does weigh on me a lot.
you just go,
I just in my head,
it's alright.
In my head, I go grumpy guy, but outside I'm like, oh, it's alright.
And that would be like the kind of people pleasing, like not people like socialization and wanting to be a social person and kind of a facilitator of general good social vibes.
Yeah.
That would be you just being like, I don't want these people to like hate me, and I want them to like get along with each other, and I want there to be a sense of order. And you know that if you were to be an interjecting person to be all like, "Nah, guys, stop," that would kind of break things up.
Somewhat, but it depends on the level, because
you do get annoyed, but you don't get very like overtly. You don't go like, "I really hate this." You go, I'm a bit mad, and then afterwards you're like, that was stupid. But then, whereas in the moment, I'm just like, I'm just gonna leave. I'm just like, I'm just gonna leave. I don't like. For me, I just go. I'm like, no, I don't like this. I'm leaving.
If it's extreme, I'll interject. You know, if it's a situation that's like pretty inappropriate or pretty bad,
but like the thing is, it's got for you. It's got to get to a level red. You know what I mean? It's got to get to like code black before you do anything. Whereas for me, I'm like, if it's like slightly yellow, I'm like, no, it's too far. It's too crazy.
There was a time like the other night I did interject in
so
a situation.
Like a green for me, like a nightclub is like a code yellow, and then like red would be like code red would be like injury. And then code black would be cops called.
I'll interject before it gets to injury.
I reckon, definitely. I think you would go like maybe an orange zone, like in between like a nightclub.
Yeah, if it
like
gets to orange,
the craziness of a nightclub to like somebody actually
I reckon just outside the yellow zone is where I get cautious.
I think orange is like a kid tripping over, maybe. Like a kid tripping over and grazing their arm. You know what I mean? It's not like the biggest thing, but you've got to address it, especially if it's like a kid that you have to look after.
Yeah, definitely.
So I always thought you'd be one of those people that's like, if it gets to like code black, like if the cops are like
if it
called
gets before
and you have to call the fire brigade and stuff, you're like, maybe I should do something.
No. I'll fully step in, like, you know, if someone's drunk and a bottle gets dropped, I'll step in.
Okay, and you clean up the bottle.
Yeah, that happened the other night. Like the other night,
but for me, I'm like, I'd leave before someone even got drunk. That's just, but that's fair, me.
That's
but
for me though, because I'm like, I've got to make sure nothing happens.
Do you reckon
I've got to make sure,
I've
got to make sure that there's no fallout. So if someone's drunk right now, I've got to be around to make sure everything's going to be okay. And if someone, if it doesn't be okay, then I'm there to clean it up, and there to be like, no.
Do you think that would reflect into relationships in the way that I'm like, if anything's slightly off, I just leave, whereas you're just like, that's fine. Okay, this is a little too far. Whereas I'm like, okay, this is a bit weird.
Potentially, but for me, it's not like, my mentality isn't, that's fine. It's me like, You
err on the side of caution.
It's me like.
But do you think it's not enough? Do you think or do you think you're fine with the level of caution?
So I reckon, like what I do is I watch out, I won't step in immediately, but if something small happens, that could lead to something bigger, that's when I step in. So a bottle dropping isn't a massive thing, but it can lead to more. So that's when I step in and cut it off, shut it down.
Okay.
And I feel like that's a good way to be, because you're assessing the situation actively. You're not, if it's just a harmless situation where, people are just being, silly or being funny or, that's fine. It can be harmless. It can, it can have no ongoing effects. But once it gets to like the bottle dropping stage or, there's other sorts of things happening, then it can lead further, and that's when you need to take action and cut it off. Yep. So if my role isn't like, that's okay. I'm being actively cautious, waiting for it to increase slightly before it gets worse, and then acting, when you have all the information, when you have all the data, and then when you have that additional data point that's saying, okay, this is going to increase.
Yeah. But would you say that you don't want like that level of attitude to be like when it comes to a relationship, there's a lot of sanctity there.
It's a bit different because for me, like, if there was, I don't know how the metaphor would be able to be changed to a relationship.
Because for me, I'm like one of these people who kind of believes in like dialectic materialism. Yeah. So like I believe like the way that you think about one thing goes into one thing, goes into the other, goes into like the way you build your Lego set is the same way you eat dinner, is the same way you do this, is the same way you think about your bank account. It's like, for me, it's like it's not an intentional one system for all. It's this unconscious like structurement that you kind of see the world should be, but not like per se as like the world should actually look like that. It's just this unconscious this unconscious way of rolling through things.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's fair. I agree. Like dialectical materialism is very real.
Yeah.
And I think that's very true. But in this case, like, you know, the way I watch and become cautious with a situation and you know, stick around to make sure my friends are going to be okay and, you know, nothing terrible is going to happen, I think that's very different to, you know, I'm in a relationship and I see red flags. You know, I'm not going to like, you know, if I see like a small red flag at first, I'll be cautious.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be like this thing where I'm like letting it continue on and continue on. Like, so I think that's where the difference is.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
like, it takes a lot of like a mental control because like, yeah, for me, like if I was as cautious as I was, I wouldn't get anywhere. You know what I mean? Like I'm bragging on as I am, I think I'm not as cautious as I think I, you know, want to be half the time. But you know,
for me, my level of caution is relating to like, the reason I'm cautious is because I care about like the impacts of my friends. So if I step out of a situation and then let it go.
Yeah, there's too much of a burden. It's too much of a burden, right?
If I'm, you know, for example, if I'm the only sober person in a group or something, if I step out of that situation, then it's like, you know, you're stopping you're letting an avalanche fall. You know, you're dropping a snowball on the floor and letting it go.
Yeah.
It rolls and it turns into this massive boulder.
Yeah.
But if you stay there, you hold the snowball up for a bit.
Yep.
Just let it calm down. The snowball's going to melt. Then you're fine. Like, you know, then it's just water trickling down a hill. So that's sort of the role I have in that sort of situation is, you know, if I was to step out.
Yeah, so you're a social person who likes to facilitate, but also like help. But you're not going to like be too overly cautious. But when you're going to be a helping hand,
it would be
when the times call for it, your hand is there to help.
Yeah, for me, my caution isn't overt. I let the vibe and I facilitate the vibe. But when there is a level of action needed, or when there is even a small level of action, that's when you stop it getting further. Because you sort of facilitate something, and you're there for support, and you're there to sort of protect the people around you, and you're there to help them through any situation that may arise. But you're there to try to also stop it before it happens.
Yeah.
So if things get a little bit out of hand, then you just stop it. You know.
Yeah. So what would you say is like a piece of advice for people in relationships when it comes to the red flaggy stuff?
Well, I guess it depends on the severity of the red flag, you know. If it's something that can be addressed well and something that can be, you know, if it's something that's not massively important, can be addressed well and can be changed or fixed or navigated easily, then I would definitely do it. But if it's like a major red flag,
so what are the core what are some like 3 core examples that you could use for people in the broad spectrum of your own, like through your own knowledge?
Okay, so red flags, classic example probably is someone is, you know, you're 2 weeks into a relationship.
Yes.
Someone is constantly bombarding you with messages. In a way,
bombing.
Like,
is this the love bombing trend?
But further to a point where they're like further to a point where they're like, so not just like love bombing you,
harassment,
not just love bombing you, but it's more like, okay, why are you at work? Like, you know, take this time off work now, or like, you know, or do you need to work tomorrow? No, just call in sick, or like take time off work, or take time off uni to see.
Is that a common thing?
It can be a common thing. Like maybe not that.
Has that happened to you, or has that happened to people you know?
It has happened to me.
Really?
It got a bit further.
How was that? How did you deal with that?
Well, look, I didn't deal with it well.
How come? Did you just not know how to mentally navigate a situation? Because I can agree, I wouldn't know how to mentally navigate that.
So yeah, that was back when I was.
I just say no.
When I was back, that was back when I was 17. You know, like it didn't. Yeah. It may not be quite.
You can't critically think when you're 17 as well as you can as life goes on.
It may not quite be as overt as like, you know, take time off work, but it may be something even a bit similar or like different to like, oh, you're hanging out with your friend that day? No, just hang out with me. Or like, you know, slowly sort of positioning things in place to where the other person is only hanging out with you, or you're only hanging out with them.
Okay.
And like trying to like, you know,
and
telling them, like, you know, you love them and you're doing this because you love them and you want to only hang out with them. And you only want to hang out with them, and then you only want them to hang out with you, and you love them and you know, they're your whole world and this and that. Like that can be like, sure, like you can express your feelings to someone, but if you know, if after 2 weeks they're trying to like sort of eliminate all your friends and tell you to stop doing everything except for hanging out with them, then very big red flag, and that can just lead to worse things like it did for me. Like,
so like so when you see, so that's the kind of early on thing that's like, get out of there. Is that what you're saying?
That,
or
like,
you
should be out of there before that. If they're getting to the point where they're like trying to tell you to take time off work or something, or like, you know, love bombing you and telling you to like give up your certain, you know, responsibilities, you should be out before that stage. But if you're not, then that's the time to get out already. Yeah. But you know, you got to cautiously, like, before it gets to that stage, they're going to be testing the waters probably. So they're going to be like, you know,
who's going to be the abuser?
Yeah,
the abusive
potential
person.
abuser. Yeah. So they're going to be testing the waters in the sense that they're going to, like, you know, within, like, if it's a week, right? If, you know, maybe you meet them online for like a dating app, or like you meet them somewhere, or like you officially start a relationship or something, you know, after a certain period of time being friends with them. Yeah. You know, in that first week, they might be testing the waters, and slowly, well, not even slowly, but like, you know, every day they slightly increase the extremity of the language they use to you.
Interesting,
so, you know, like,
interesting. Yeah.
First day they're like, you know, saying to you like, "Ooh, good night, beautiful," or like, you know, like, "Ooh, I really like you today," or like, you know, what, like, something like that. Like,
fair.
Like, and then the second day they might be like writing you like a paragraph like, "You're so amazing. Like, thanks for this chat. You blessed me with your presence and this and that," and like, you know,
that's funny.
And then the third day they might be like, you know, "Today was another great day, thanks to you, beautiful. You make my world shine bright, and you make the sun like, you know," and then like, you know, every day, like, there's an increase, you know, the test in the waters to see what level of, you know, just what level.
So
of
kind of just like, it's like the boiling frog. It's like the love boiling frog. If you know, when you boil a frog, you can't just boil it from the bottom up. You know, you can't just chuck it in a million degrees. You have to kind of, you have to slowly. So it's about building pressure.
But
so that's the first one.
They build it like pretty quickly.
So,
they're going to try to increase it very quickly though.
So the first core red flag at the start of a relationship is a kind of a gradual build of pressure over like a fortnight's worth of time.
Yeah, that's one of the many that can happen. Like,
let's talk about a second one.
So another one is, you know, something like, if you're, so, you know, you've actually committed to a relationship, right?
Yeah.
So then the other person is either extremely accusatory or extremely defensive about certain things. So, you know,
interesting.
Say for example, like, this is not something I would necessarily do, but it's also not inappropriate in my opinion. Massively inappropriate. It's not massively inappropriate. So you're out. So, you know, you're in a relationship as a guy, and you go out with your other, you go out with your other male friends.
Sorry.
You go out with your other male friends to like a bar or an arcade, or like an arcade bar, or like a nightclub.
A lads' night.
So like a lads' night out, but you're going in public to maybe like a bar or a nightclub.
So you're just hanging out.
So you're hanging out.
Yeah.
If you're doing something like that, in my opinion, that's not a massively bad move.
No,
if
it's not a bad thing. I think all of our viewers, our listeners, will be like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, like that seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
But then if you're like partner, you know, if you're a guy and you're, you know, maybe you're a heteronormative relationship. If you're in with a woman, you know, and she's texting you like, "Why are you hanging out with your guys at a nightclub? Like, are you going to cheat on me? Are you doing this? Are you doing that?" Like,
so like the suspicion of cheating.
If there's instant suspicion.
Yeah, because what I've heard about that is people that are immediately suspicious all the time are people who are very just insecure.
Yeah.
It's just people who have spent they're insecure either because they've done it in the past, or because it's been done to them, or they're just one of those people who's just embarrassed of
low self-esteem.
A lot of people, because like a lot of embarrassment in relationships and the way it manifests as like your personality, it kind of comes through a lot. Like if you're really embarrassed of like that you've done this and that in your life, it shows in the way that you kind of always bring up what you don't like about yourself to other people.
Exactly. But yeah, so like, you know, instant suspicion or, you know, accusation within a short period of time, or even a long period of time, if if someone that you're in a relationship with for no apparent reason, if you haven't given them any sort of
Out of
reason to
nowhere,
be
out of
suspicious. If
nowhere,
they're out of
yeah.
nowhere suspicious, that's a bit of a red flag. That
Yeah.
is one of the first signs that they're going to become controlling
Yeah.
and abusive.
So that's the second core point. The first one is the kind of the kind of boiling frog love bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is immediately suspicious and jealous.
Yeah.
And that's it within that fortnight span, that fortnight of
So that can
getting
happen
started.
that can happen pretty immediately. If you know,
Yeah.
if you're with someone for 2 weeks and the second
yeah.
weekend you're hanging out,
Yeah.
they can be suspicious of that.
So what's your third?
So a third major flag is sort of the opposite end of the suspicion thing.
Oh,
So it's sort
okay.
of this
Yep.
weird they are they don't, obviously you're in a relationship. They don't owe you explanation of everything, So you shouldn't really be checking in for everything and asking what are you doing, where are you going, who are you going with. But there is a certain level of communication.
So they're avoiding talking to you about anything.
Yeah. So you may just be making conversation, be like, oh hey, what are you up to tonight, or just there's a certain if you're genuinely doing it as a conversational thing, you can just check in with them, or even you could be like, oh hey, I want to hang out, what are you doing anything this Friday or whatever.
Yeah.
But if they're super sort of defensive or super sketchy about it, even if they're just randomly lying to you about things that don't matter, maybe they'll say, oh yeah, I'm going out with the boys, and then they ended up inviting Jessica. That's fine, they can invite Jessica, but if they're lying to you about something that trivial and being I thought you would get mad, instead of communicating with you about hey, I don't think I think you might be a bit concerned about this, but I'll just communicate. We're wanting to invite Jessica out. I understand if you're concerned, but Jessica's a long-term friend, and there's really nothing going on.
Okay.
But if they just if this guy's so I'm just going out with the boys, and then Jessica's also invited, and then you find out and you're oh hey, look, if as long as it could still be nothing, because obviously it's just Jessica, right? But then if you try to sort of communicate your concerns, you're oh, I kind of found out that Jessica was invited, that's cool.
Yeah.
But I'm a little bit concerned, why did you feel the need to lie to me? And then if they're super defensive about it, there's still, Jessica might not be an issue, it's still not, but if they're defensive about it, then it just, that's sort of showing you that they're not amazing at communicating in that way, They're still, Jessica may be completely innocent here, but if he's lying to you about it because he thinks you're going to be concerned, and then is super defensive about it, and super why are you questioning me and this and that, even for something that doesn't matter in something small, then their level of communication for a larger scale issue, or their level of secrecy for a larger scale issue that they think is really bad, it's probably going to be way worse. They may not even ever cheat, but they may do something weird, or they may do something different, or they may just lie about so many other things in the relationship because they think you're going to be judging them, or they think you're going to be concerned about something, so they lie to make it easier. But then they could just keep doing that, and then it just kind of leads to more and more and more. But if someone's you're in the early stages of a relationship, and if someone's, you'd be oh hey, are you doing anything this Friday? Then they're oh yeah, just going out, we're inviting Jessica, just want to let you know that, but also don't worry, Jessica's got this boyfriend who's in the group, or this or that, and that's pretty fine, Obviously, there's, on the flip side of that, you can't expect explanation for every single thing. There's a certain level of, you don't want to be controlling either, but you can just also if you just check in and be hey, what's going on, what's up tonight? You doing anything? Or what's the vibes,
that's just Good folks always do that.
Yeah.
Just normal good mates.
But yeah, so I think pretty much there's too much, questioning and too much suspicion can be bad, but also too much, lying and darting around certain things, and lying about stupid trivial things, inviting Jessica out when, just because just
person X,
random stupid small things.
Yeah,
these are sort of your initial red flags that can lead to further issues.
So your top three would be the kind of love bombing, but it's a kind of the boiling frog. Second one, accusatory and jealous behavior, hyper jealous, unnecessarily. And then the third one is
just being weirdly inconsistent and just sort of lying about stupid things that don't matter.
So just lying, just pretty
much probably is what I'd,
untruthful behavior and Untruthful and avoidant behavior, lying behavior.
Yeah, definitely.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? What are some? Do you have any ideas for like red flags that you would say like that's not a good thing in a relationship, even like early days, you know?
Yeah, I think you've kind of nailed it with those three. Like, definitely those are some big ones. I think, yeah, that's pretty good. There's not much else I can add to that, really.
Yeah.
Nothing off the top of my head. I guess, like, on and off again attitude. Like, if it's like you've been like talking to someone for 2 months and they're like real into you one day, and then like the next weekend rolls over and they're like, nah, I don't want to like date you at all. And then you're like, okay, cool, that was random, but look, we couldn't make it work, I guess. And then the next day you wake up and they send you like a good morning message with like a love heart, and you're like, oh, hi. And they're like, hey, how are you today? I'm like, I'm all right. What's going on? I thought you didn't want to speak to me. Oh, look, last night I just didn't know what I was thinking. And then like,
just really
the next day,
inconsistent,
actually, no, like that kind of attitude will literally just drive you criminally insane. Like you'll be in like a sanatorium. Like you'll be in the cuckoo's nest or whatever. Like you'll just be going crazy. Like you'll lose your mind. And I think it is like emotional, like it's an emotional manipulation thing.
Yeah, definitely keeps
also
you,
like
they're trying to keep you
the gaslighting too.
Oh,
it's
yes,
like,
most
oh,
definitely.
do you know where I put my like? Do you know where I put that like that card for the restaurant? You never went to you never got that card for a restaurant. Oh no, I got a card for a restaurant. No, you didn't. It's like people, like parents do it, friends do it, and like if it happens in a relationship a lot, that's a really big red flag. Especially
or even like a thing like, oh yeah, like do you know where'd you put the keys? Like I gave you the keys.
So I never gave. Oh yeah.
Or like you never gave me the keys. Like.
But it's usually way more serious than that. Like I can't.
But like that's just a low level guess.
Yeah.
Like it could be something like
I can't give you a good example because I can't think of one.
Yeah. Or it could be even just like if we're using the Jessica or person X example.
Yeah, it's like you never told me you had a problem with her. I always told you had a problem with her.
Or it's like
like that kind of thing.
Even before there's a problem, it could be like, oh yeah, like I just this is no biggie, but you just told me you're going out with boys, and then they're like, no, I told you about Jessica. Like I told you this.
No, I told you about her.
Yeah,
no, you never did. No, I told you. Yeah, like basically just lying, right?
Yeah,
but it's that lying. It's that lying, but like convincing someone else they're crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a big one. So what have I got so far?
You've got kind of gaslighting. You've got being like just like inconsistent. I guess.
Inconsistent.
That weird like emotional manipulation.
Flip flopping, gaslighting. I think just like prolonging things after they're done. Really, it's like like thinking like I guess like it goes into the first one, but like trying to like hyper prolong something for too long. It's like you've already like broken up like massively once, and then you try and get it started again. Like somebody else tries to get it started again. Like you really can't get it started again.
Yeah,
and like people who flip flop, you never ever want to talk to those people. Like it's just terrible.
Yeah, and if it's even before it's ended, if there's like if the foundations have crumbled and you're still holding on for dear life, like.
I guess people who also lie about who they are, like that's an obvious one.
Definitely.
But like looking for consistencies in like who they are, like that's pretty obvious. But that's one, I guess.
Yeah. I would say also like one of the major ones, which isn't really a factor of like, a red flag about a person.
Yeah.
But a red flag about the relationship is more like if you're like early stages and you like haven't had the conversation in terms of like what you're looking for or what this is, or even like if it's the sort of thing where you're looking for a relationship and they're looking for like weird like not weird's a bit judgy, but like weird, like a friends with benefits type situation or something that.
Well, that is a bit weird. I guess it's weird if you're in it for the relationship and they're just in it to be some like, weird.
Yeah,
some
like friends. So if you haven't had that conversation and you're kind of realizing that it seems that you're looking for
bad foundation,
massive red flag. Don't even like if you.
Also, another good thing is if your friends just tell you no.
Yeah.
If everyone is like, oh, that's weird. Like that's just you should probably not do that. Then you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Even if you're like, no, trust me. I know what's good for me.
Yeah. And even if like if you have had the conversation, you're like, in your heart you were like, okay, when we have this conversation, I'm going to say I'm looking for a relationship. So you have the conversation, the other
Yeah.
person says, yeah, I'm looking for friends with benefits, or I'm looking for like a casual, like, just a sexual sort of relationship, no strings attached.
Hooking up.
Like, I'm looking for like this consistent, like hooking up type thing. And even if you do finally express, I'm looking for a relationship. But if
You're not going to find
after that,
you're not going to find a relationship with people who are looking for hookups.
If you then after that convince yourself you're okay with this like non-relationship friends with benefits type thing when you weren't looking for that, that's a red flag. It's not necessarily the other person's fault, and it's not necessarily your fault fully, but it kind of is a little bit. If you're trying to like convince yourself that you're going to be happy with this person because they're like a good person or whatever, and they're looking for something different to you, they can be an amazing person, but you're not going to be fulfilled. The relationship isn't going to be good because one of you two is going to be unhappy. Even if you're the one getting fulfilled or not getting fulfilled, the other person might still be unhappy subconsciously because they know they're not giving you what you were looking for, and they're upset about it even. Or you might be upset because you're not getting facilitated in the way that you need to be facilitated. So just leave. Like, if you are having that conversation and they're expressing they want different things to you before the relationship, just assess it appropriately and say, look, I think you're a great person. We could probably just be a friend if you're like comfortable with that and if you think you can do that. But if not, don't be trying to force yourself into this one type of relationship. If you're looking for something else, it can even go conversely. Like, if you're someone who's looking for like a casual friends with benefits type thing, which is like, yeah, fair enough. Like, if you want that, yeah, sure, like whatever. And the other person's looking for a relationship, don't force yourself into the relationship. Don't force yourself into something you're not comfortable with.
Yeah.
Like, relationships are great
Also,
and
just
stuff, but like,
Like, I think this is a big mistake that a lot of young guys make, and I think you'll agree with me, is just like, if like if you're a guy who like in school, you never really got like very far or popular, especially with girls and anything like that. A huge mistake that a lot of guys make is that like the first girl that meets them and that's interested in them, they're like, yo, this is like something brand new. I've never had this before. So they just, and this one girl like is like, super keen on them. They just like, yeah, let's date. Like they don't even like them or anything, but they're like, they meet them and they're immediately like, yeah, no, like 100%, let's date. But they don't like them. They don't care about them.
Yeah.
And they don't.
they're kind of forcing themselves to like them because they're like, if they like me, then I should like them back.
Because they just like they're just keen on like whatever girl like
and they're
turns
keen on
up.
like they prefer the concept of a relationship to the actual like whatever quality relationship is going to be. It's like, I want one, and this person likes me, so I'm going to go for it. No, I understand that. I know people who've done that, and like it's like very easy
and
to
it
do,
never
like,
ends well.
It ends terribly. Like either either the guy ends up despising the girl if he's like had to be like, oh, I don't like her, but I'll still do it. He might end up like despising her, or she might end up being like, what are you doing? Like, we're supposed to be in a relationship. Why are you like treating me like you don't care, or why are you like so nonchalant or non-affectionate to me when like, I want I need affection, or I need like validation or certain things like as you do in a relationship.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, oh, like what? I don't need to do that. I don't care. Like.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're not going like it's just not something you can make yourself do. Like if you don't like someone, you're not going to be like. You're not just gonna like wake up one day and like them one day.
Exactly.
It's the same way the other way around. If someone doesn't like you, they're not just gonna wake up one day and be like your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
in the way that like you might already be boyfriend and girlfriend, but they're not gonna be your boyfriend.
Yeah, they're not gonna
or
actually
your
wake up
girlfriend.
and be your partner, like your proper partner.
No, they won't.
And there's like another red flag I just thought of coming off the top of this conversation.
Yeah, there was something. Yeah,
it's like,
I think it's the same one.
It's if you two are with your love languages and your love style incompatible, that's like a bad thing. So if you're like, if you're someone who requires maybe words of affection or physical touch or something like that, if you're someone who thrives off that and needs to feel appreciated in those ways, and your partner is someone who, maybe gift giving or something, or if that's important to them, if
they're not collaborative and if you're not in the same kind of mindset about how things should be and whatever, and it's obvious and it's early, like just don't.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Don't force it.
You can express that to someone. Like for me, like I would say probably my main love languages are probably like words of affirmation, physical touch. I just do a lot of things. I love gift giving and acts of service, but probably the main ones are like words of affirmation and physical touch. If I had a partner that was valued or appreciated gift giving and acts of service, you can, if you are communicated that, then you can model those behaviors. And if you're not averted to those behaviors, I'm not averted to acts of service or gift giving, and I'm happy to do that. If that's how my partner appreciates it, then that can be fine. But if you two are communicating your love language styles, and the other person or even yourself are uncomfortable or just unwilling to express your love in a more compatible way with the other person, then that's not good.
No,
that's the main issue. I feel like.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
I agree with that.
if your partner wants to show affection to you by cooking or something, if you're okay with that, and if you can understand that every time they cook for you, they're showing how much they love you, and if you can if that is something you can learn to appreciate, or even just appreciate off the bat, once you've been communicated that, then that's fine. That's going to work, because you can be every time they cook for you, you can be thinking in your mind, you'll be oh my god, they must love me this much. But if you can't understand that, or if you can't if it doesn't make sense, or if it's not something you can come to terms with, that's fine. But that means that the relationship is not that compatible.
Exactly. Yeah, no, yeah, I guess that's not so much a red flag, but that's just a point of incompatibility that you need to.
It's not a terribly unhealthy thing, but it just means that if you both can't either understand each other's expressions of love, or if you can't model your own expressions of love to more compatibly express to another person in a way that you're comfortable with, then it's not necessarily a red flag, but it's just not going to facilitate a relationship where two people are both, feeling equally loved and equally reciprocative of that love.
What about, so let's talk about positives then.
So positives,
I think we started on positives, but we'll keep going on positives.
Yeah, we'll keep going on positives, because I think we just very kind of lightly touched on it.
Yeah, we just talked about chemical collaboration, compatibility.
Yeah, I would say one of the greenest flags in a relationship is just consistency, which is not something you can immediately assess, I guess, but consistency in a relationship is
you'll know if you're 6 months in.
Yeah, if you're exactly.
It's it feels as if it just kind of went. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You'll know when you've reached the year mark and you're wow, we're at a year. We're at a year. That's insane. But it's oh my god, I didn't we have just been so comfortably together and moving forward,
exactly,
and just forming something that's kind of just between ourselves. That's a sacred bond that we just kind of we just exist with each other, and we're just here for each other.
Yeah.
And you're at a year, and you're damn, we're at a year already. What are we going to do for that? It's oh, well, we just, let's just keep rolling with the same stuff we normally do.
Exactly,
but let's just have a nice little moment.
Yeah.
But that's how you'll know if it's good. Because it won't feel taxing. It won't feel stressful. You won't be fighting. Trust me, people always say every couple fights. No, that's quite wrong. I think people who fight with each other just don't know how to look for the best in each other. I don't have too many fights. Not with the people in my life, not with the partner in my life,
I think,
I don't have any fights with my partner. There's nothing that I'm particularly mad about.
There are times when it will be extremely difficult to.
But it's all about
manage, but you
but when
you're communicate until it gets before that stage. You can communicate it down before it gets
easy.
To that stage.
It's quite easy, especially if you're in a good relationship. It's quite easy to avoid getting into that bad. It's we're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it.
Oh yeah, you never want to get to that stage. But
you're not gonna it's not gonna it's not gonna be a reoccurring thing every month. It's oh no, we're having a big fight at the moment. I have to sleep on the couch. It's if that's the state of affairs, you really have to fix something. Something is going wrong.
Yeah, and
that's
with children, that adds a certain level of complexity. So you can have more arguments related to that. Because
children are a financial strain.
Yeah.
And most relationships break up due to finances. And most arguments happen because of finances. And we're living in a cost of living crisis. And it's a so-called cost of living crisis, but we all know what it is. It's one of capitalism's many It's one of capitalism's
many drawbacks, I guess.
well, it's just capitalism is always in crisis, which just means that dialectic material wise, people who live under capitalism who aren't critical of the system will not understand that the crisis is not just because the government couldn't do enough. It's like, no, this is the free market. The government isn't the free market. The government can't tell woolies what to price their things as much as they can competitor watchdogs and ACCC and all that kind of stuff. It's like, no, it's just how the market operates. The market is always failing and it always needs to be propped up. And right now the market's failing. You don't want that market failing to go into your relationship. And economic, hard times can create people who are just completely distraught. You know what I mean? You run out of money and all that kind of stuff.
But I was also so it can cause.
But that's I'm not. I wasn't trying to intrude on your point. I'm talking about my own point here.
No, definitely. But so exactly, I agree with what you're saying, and that's very true. And that can fail relationships, and it can cause a lot of argument and frustration. But even then, you can you can communicate. It's difficult, and you will not escape from zero arguments, even if it's technically a non-zero chance that will happen.
Would you say? So there's always a chance that you could have an argument about something.
There's always. So what I'm saying is, there's technically a non-zero chance that you won't have that argument. But if there's other factors like,
What does that mean?
So with kids and stuff, with financial issues, there's technically a non-zero chance that you're not going to have an argument. But it's going to be way more difficult. And so it means that, often there's going to be chances that,
you might not
the
chance of having an
argument,
you could never not have an argument. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that it's technically possible to never have an argument.
Yeah,
but that's very unlikely. Even though it's technically possible that you're not going to have that.
Yeah, but it wouldn't
it's
be...
It's extremely difficult.
It doesn't have to be a fight. It can be somewhat of a discussion. A friendly discussion. And I understand kids can cause you stress and pain, and especially if you don't understand how to navigate through those kind of things. That makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
I mean, and even it can get to a higher level argument, because children and finances are very emotional. They have very high emotions attached to them for both members of the relationship.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to cause a big argument if you can communicate effectively and sort of understand that and put aside your emotions. But it's very difficult to do often. And if you have a vested interest in your children, like most parents do, and if your partner, if you're having an argument about your children, your partner is also going to have that same vested interest, but for a different argument point. So, it's very often difficult to put aside your emotions, but you can try to understand the other side's emotions, and you can try to even if you end up in this big argument, it's always possible to not say bad things to the other person. You don't call them you don't call them a name, or you don't even if you're high energy in a high energy discussion and you're talking to each other in an elevated manner because you're upset or because you have a vested interest in this other idea, you still never need to take it up that extra notch and call your partner a name or swear at your partner or have that happen to you.
No, you don't. Yeah, you don't ever want to be a destructive person to another person, especially someone who you're in a relationship with.
Yeah, I've had sort of high high energy discussions or
I've definitely had my arguments with people.
Yeah,
but I've definitely had arguments with people who I wasn't in a relationship per se, but it was technically a relationship, but it wasn't something that I wasn't there because I thought I was in a relationship. I was there because I thought I was trying to turn someone who I was in a relationship with to a friend.
Yeah, I mean,
but they wanted to go even further.
Yeah, I mean, even with us, we've had certain high level, high energy discussions, but we
never
called each other names or said terrible things to each other or anything.
Yeah,
like that,
I don't think we've ever really had an argument per se. We've just had to talk over things.
Yeah, and that's what it kind of relates to. I think
I think we've had our gentlemanly debates and our kind of moments of
disagreement with certain
points of disagreement. But it's never we would never really had to we've never really like gotten physical or
Oh,
aggressive
no,
over
definitely
over
not.
like anything, even if it's like obscurely offensive. It's never
Yeah.
been two thing, but it's been just point of like a relevant point that has been raised to raise that point as a focal point of change or
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
catalyst for change, and it's a catalyst for positive change. Never,
Yeah, yeah.
never anything just to be negative for the
Oh,
negative sake.
exactly. And like
And
that's,
that's how you roll. That's how
and
you
we're,
be. That's how you progress.
we're friends, but that translates to relationships. You can
Yep.
have that discussion maturely about a certain focal point
Yep.
that is an issue of contention, or and that can be a catalyst for a positive change if both members are receptive and communicating in an effective way with each other. If it is an issue that can be changed, and it's not a massive like big issue like you're abusing me and beating the beating
Yeah.
the
No.
life
That
out of me,
you
yeah.
gotta
It's
go
like,
to a shelter.
if it's sort of more of like a sort of, oh, I just want to communicate to you that I feel, something like, I feel like I'm not getting the energy that I'm putting in, or I feel like I feel like there's a disparity between the time I'm making for you and the time you're making for me, like something like that in a relationship. If you can communicate that before it gets to a massive issue, and in a respectful way, and
Yeah, in
then,
relationship and in friendship and
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. I
exactly,
guess.
and if you can communicate that before it gets to a massive scream match, before it has to get to anything bigger because you're emotional or they're emotional, then you can pretty easily fix that and pretty easily like just work on it.
Yeah,
And that's,
and I guess a lot of those things rely on your perceptiveness and like the perceptiveness of anyone in a circumstance like that, and how they kind of want to like try to amend what they do and stuff
Yeah,
like that,
definitely.
and
And as,
things like that.
And if you find yourself feeling frustrated at a friend or a partner, you have to know why. Like you have to
A lot
understand
of the
why,
things,
so
like
you
a lot
can
of
communicate that.
a lot of the things that can kind of be quelled, especially with those irrational, like, oh, I'm mad about that. It's like, just kind of think about, like, I think a lot of it kind of relies on a self. You got to look into yourself and be like,
Yeah.
am I really mad about that? Or am I mad that I did this wrong yesterday, but I can't get out the aggression
Yeah.
around that because I'm trying to avoid feelings around that? Like,
Exactly.
am I
exactly.
mad that I accidentally broke something yesterday? Or am I mad that I did something slightly unethical? Or things that a lot of guilty conscience is never addressed, especially like young men. They don't address their emotions enough and don't go to therapy, and they don't address their guilty conscience. And a lot of people will walk around with heavy consciences, but they
Yeah.
won't be like, I feel really bad that I did this.
Yeah.
I feel
They
bad
push
that
it
I
onto the
broke
next
this.
person or something.
But yeah, you'll be thinking thoughts like that. People think thoughts like this, or
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel bad that when I was younger I did this, so I'm just gonna like be mad at XYZ because
Yeah.
of no reason really. It's like, oh, I'm mad at you. It's like, why? It's like, oh, you did that the other day, and it's really annoying. But it's like, no. In most senses, like this is like really important.
Yeah.
Like you just have to think, okay, did I, like, am I frustrated because yesterday I did this? And then you're generally like, yes, I actually am. And then
Or even if you're
it's
angry at-
interesting because it's as if those thoughts around another person have just evaporated.
Yeah.
It's just like, because they just do go away. It's like, am I mad at this person, or am I just mad at myself because I'm guilty? It's like, okay, I actually am guilty. I'll just quickly amend for that now. I'll in the next 5 minutes, I'll try and fix whatever I broke. I'll try and do whatever I have, like undo what I've done, or I'll try and, when I can, I'll try and fix it. But right now,
Yeah.
I need to get a grasp of myself, don't yell at anyone else over something, and just kind of fix whatever needs fixing first.
Yeah, or even, your partner might do something yesterday that offended you, and then today they dropped a leaf, a salad leaf on the floor, or they burnt, your dinner or something, and you're getting really upset at them for that. You have to,
you really shouldn't.
for certain things
I think,
like that, for certain situations where, someone's done action X, in the past, and then action Y you're having a high reaction to, you owe that to that person and to yourself to understand the originator of that emotion, which was the original
also,
action,
like,
and to communicate that.
Yeah.
To communicate that so that they can, rectify that error.
Yeah.
And so that they don't feel like you're getting mad at them for doing like a really small thing and feel like they're getting unfairly sort of.
I think when it comes to those arguments that are sparked off of disturbance yesterday, and then you get disturbed today slightly, and it just kicks off something. It's also important to take in consideration a lot of grand scheme thinking. You know what I mean?
Oh
Like,
yeah, definitely.
it's
But
like it's like you can be mad. It's like being mad at a Russian person for like the war in Ukraine. It's like that's so big, so big. Don't worry. Like it's so big that it's like, why are you trying to like tackle a dragon by stepping on a lizard? You know what I mean? It's you're trying to
Like,
you're trying to quell something mega massive. It's also, you got to also understand, people just always make mistakes. Like that's what I like always know. I'm never really that mad at anyone for doing something weird or dumb or saying something stupid. I'm like, yeah, look, like I'm always on camera and I have a lot of moments. Like I'm on camera. Actually, I'm not always on camera. I'm on camera rarely, but every time I'm on camera, I always say or do something particularly wrong and notable. But I'm like, yeah, I like say the wrong thing 24/7. And like notably, and when I'm on camera, I'm like ultra vigilant. I'm like, okay, I better not say anything stupid. And then I watch it back. I'm like, why did I just say that? And then like I realize in conversation, I must just say the wrong thing a lot. So I don't get mad at people when they'll be like having a mad chat, and instead of they'll be like, oh man, barbecue sauce goes really well on this, and I like to put barbecue sauce. Was I saying barbecue sauce? I meant tomato sauce. It's never like, why did you say barbecue sauce the whole time? It's like, oh, that's all right. I think I got the vibe anyway.
Yeah.
That's how you have to think. Even like if your partner is like, oh, was I putting underwear in like the sock drawer? I didn't even realize. You can't be like, well then why were you doing it? You just gotta be like, that's fine. You just I'll just fix it for you. Don't worry. Like just go. If you know how to do something, they do something wrong, you can either show them the right way to do it or just do it for them, I guess. That's not that offensive. You know, it's just about amending things that are slightly in the way.
Yeah,
but
and if it's causing you disturbance, you can just communicate that. Like, just be like, you know, even if it's a small thing, if it's weighing on you heavily, then it is important to the other person if they care about you. You know, even if it might not be important, don't get upset at them, but you can just communicate to them. Be like, oh, hey, like, you know, yesterday you said barbecue sauce was bad. That actually really made me, like, a little bit upset. And I know, you know, don't try to disvalidate your feelings, but also communicate, like, oh, I know, like, it's not a massive issue, but I still, like, just want to communicate that. And if the partner, you know, if your partner's good, they'll probably just be like, oh yeah, they'll just be receptive to it and be like, they won't invalidate your feelings.
I think at
them
them, like what I would say to that is, like, in the moment, just say exactly what you think. Really, like, I understand that there's a lot of people who don't want to be in like a conflict scenario, but it's like, if someone says, I don't like barbecue sauce, you say, oh, I love barbecue sauce. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
like,
no, but
stuff
I mean, like,
like
in
that.
a different way.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
you know,
in
like,
a different way.
If they
for
say
me,
something that,
but
like,
for me, that's how I address a lot of things. It's
yeah,
like,
that's fair.
It's like, oh, I don't want to hang out today. It's like, oh, I want to hang out today. What are you talking about? Like, if it's like something big like that, it's like, no. What's going on, skis? And it's like, oh, I got tons of stuff today. It's like, oh, fair enough. But it's like the next day, it's like, why didn't you want to hang out with me, Stitchy? Oh, I had a mad lot of things to do. Oh, sorry, I feel bad now. It's okay.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Like, that's how I deal with things.
True.
But I understand.
It is initially much better to.
But I understand because you're that serotonin.
No, but
and
also,
you
I agree
want to
with you
facilitate
saying that. I agree with
people.
you.
Yeah.
So I'm talking if you did not communicate the initial time.
Yeah.
But you should just communicate the initial time like you do, like what you said.
Yeah.
If someone immediately says something that, like, you know, offends you, or, like, you know, a partner does something or makes an immediate mistake, even if it's small, don't blow up at them. Just, like, politely and, you know.
Also, just remember, like, everybody low key is, like, still, like,
everybody's learning everything.
Like,
you know, like
in a way, like, you are still kind of 4-year-old you, and you're still 12-year-old you, and you will one day be like 60-year-old you, and your brain is all, like, preparing. Your brain is always preparing for when you're, like, old.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to gather as much as you can. Like imagine if there's, like, berries in the woods and, like, knowledge is berries. That's how your brain works. So you're trying to, like, gauge when you're, like, 40, but, like, when you're, like, 20.
Yeah.
And you're trying to fix up things for the future. Like, especially you should be vigilant about that branch. But also remember, you can just revert to back being 4 years old if you're, like, ultra, like, fixated on something, and your brain's energy is being taken by that, and somebody asks you a question, you're subconsciously rattling off whatever, it'll change the way you talk and think, but it won't sound different. Because your tonality, your voice, and your speech pattern always sounds the same, essentially. When you're sleep talking and when you're talking to somebody on the phone for the first time, there's no terrible amount of difference. So I think that's what you got to understand. The person you're in a relationship, if they say something accidentally offensive, like it's like, oh, I just want to double check. What did you say just then? I don't know. Did you say something like you didn't like this? Oh, I just was saying I didn't like anything at that. I didn't even know. Like, you can be like excusatory, even if someone was like full genuine about something and they want to tell you it's a joke later. Low key, accept it was a joke, even if it offends you. Like at the time, just remember. Like I think Wayne Dwyer is the best at removing like negative thought. I guess like everything just kind of goes to the ethereal state of the universe when it comes to like offensive things. It's like, oh, that was offensive. It's like, oh, cool. Okay, nothing changed. It's like, you know what I mean? Like that's how I feel. Like I don't get offended a lot. I get offended about like deeply transcendent things from myself, but interpersonal things with someone like is like, oh man, I'm actually the king of lollipops. It's like, bro, you're not the king of lollipops. I'm not going to be like, hey, you're lying about that.
No. Yeah, that's not really what I'm talking about either. You know what I mean? Like, if someone's like,
oh, what were you? I have no idea.
So
what you
with
were
like,
I just started talking about
with
whatever
the
I
relationship
wanted.
thing. It's like someone's talking and then someone's like, "Shut up, you're stupid," or or even just like not even that high level, but like if someone says something, it may not be important or it may be important. You can choose to address it if you wish. If you don't wish to address it, then you should definitely try to let it go. If it's not important enough for you to address, or if you feel like you can't address it because you're not comfortable with the person. If you're not comfortable with the person to address it, then you should not be in the relationship. But if you feel that it's not important enough to address, then try to let it go and think of it in a larger scale. But if you want to address it, and if it's important enough to address it respectfully and in a mature way, and give the other person the opportunity to rectify. If they said something pretty, like if they were like, oh, you're a bit of a big person,
open your mind to accepting apologies.
And also, like, in the best way to sort of go through, in my opinion, things is never attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence. And I'm not saying everybody's dumb.
No,
people will make mistakes.
But most people aren't. Most people are pretty dumb. Even smart people can make terribly stupid, impulsive decisions.
Yeah, like, someone might say something accidentally or say something stupid or
it's all about forgiveness.
Even they should have thought of what they said, or like maybe in a weird moment of being real dumb, they like did something. As long as it's not too major, and but just try to imagine that, especially if they're your partner and they care about you, they're not going to be doing anything purposefully to be like, I hate you and I want you to like be bad, feeling bad.
That's why you got to think of like, whenever someone makes a mistake, even if they're your partner or not, you just got to think of them as a toddler. Like toddlers aren't like intentionally evil. They're just not smart enough to know what's right, especially because they're not operating on an ultra tuned in brain length. And you got to understand, when people are like ultra distracted, they are basically a toddler. They're just doing whatever they're doing with kind of like 1/72nd of their brain's actual power. They kind of operate into. They might make a mistake and they'll be like, oh, whoops, okay, exactly.
And people like often will not even be
like babies cry all the
their
time.
Own, like, to the effects of their own actions at times. Because everything that you've got going on, everybody else has going on, and if someone's done something that affects you, most of the time they're going to have done it because of something they either needed to do or something that, most of the time they're not going to be doing it for a bad reason. If someone like cuts you off in traffic, they weren't cutting you off in traffic to cut you off. They were probably cutting you off because they realized they were in a right-hand only turning lane and they need to get into the left lane because they need to go straight.
Yeah,
like they
just
made a slip.
Yeah.
They made a. They were thinking of their immediate needs, or their the fact that they're gonna put themselves in a bad situation if they don't like cut you off, and they're probably gonna be like, sorry about it. But it's probably obviously as well, it's not going to affect them as much as it's going to affect you. So they're not going to be as apologetic as probably you would feel they need to be at times. But you can just communicate that as well. But, like, all I'm saying with that big spiel is everyone's not always aware of their actions and the impact they make. So you need to communicate to that person if they've made a big impact on you. You need to communicate that impact. And if they're, obviously a good partner and a good person and, like, receptive of it, then they're just going to be like, I didn't realize, and they're going to, like, be truthful, and they're going to be like, look, I was doing this because I, like, needed to get to school, or I needed to get to work, or I need to, like, do this or that for that reason. And they'll be like, I'm not trying to excuse it, but this is the reason I did it, and I didn't realize it would have a big impact. And, if they're being truthful with it, then they probably were just, unaware of the impact. And if you're okay with that, then that's fine. Like, if you're not okay with that, and if you think they should have a lot more awareness and a lot more knowledge of the impacts and sort of their decisions and stuff, then maybe you should just communicate and be like, oh, hey, look, if it's a continual issue that doesn't get rectified, or a continual thing of they're just never aware of their actions then, and you're not, like, they're not learning anything, and, no matter how much you try to communicate or teach them, they're not learning anything. And you're not, if you're not happy with that, then just leave. If there's someone that makes a blunder and also, they're not aware of their actions, maybe if you want to be with that person, if you like them as a person, and you, like, still want to, like, help them grow as a person, then you can, stick around and try to teach them. And if they're receptive, then that's fine. If they're not receptive, leave. If you're not comfortable with, like, teaching them these things because you think they should know them already, or if you're not comfortable dealing with, like, someone who may have autism or be socially inept or something, that's fine too, I guess. Just leave as well. But, like, it's all about the specific relationship. And, most of the time, even non-autistic guys will just sometimes be blissfully unaware of certain actions and how they affect. And if you're not comfortable with that, that's fine.
So people just grow up in a particular household where certain things are valued, and you'll just not see the value of certain things that people have been raised with. And culturally, that's what I mean. Like, that's what I'm talking about, our culture. Like, even our culture has differences within its walls. Like, if you know what I mean. Like, there's things that Australians, like almost all Australians care about. And like, you might meet someone from another country who just doesn't really care about things like that.
Oh yeah, exactly. And even, like,
it goes the other way, obviously.
That goes with relationships, So some things that you place at high importance, you should probably communicate, or already have communicated with your partner mutually, what is important to the both of you to like, obviously set up the good relationship.
Yeah, of course. And I think people who are kind of good for each other will have a lot of intuition, and also will be very dedicated to talking and asking as many questions as possible when they first meet each other. And especially, I think when people reach a certain age, they really have to be very cautious about
most
who
likely
they let
as
into
well,
their life.
The people who are good for each other and compatible, most likely they're going to have very similar things that they hold in high importance as well. You know what I mean? Like,
do we want to talk, like, maybe we'll do 5 more minutes and we'll talk about an age gap?
Yeah.
So, like, when it comes to age gaps, I'd say, like, low key, like, if you're, like, 18, you probably don't want to go for anyone who also isn't, like, 18 per se. Like, I just don't know if there's really, like, a lot of, like, for me, I just see too much imbalance in power when it comes to, like, particular ages. Like, I think a lot of people, like 23-year-olds who, like, go for 18-year-olds, there's a clear desire to, like, have power and manipulation over another person. Just because, like, I just don't see why a 23-year-old in their own, in their in a healthy state of mind would ever be so inclined to go for someone so young. If you know what I mean? It's very unhealthy. Yeah. It's about control or something.
I think, and as well, like, even if, if you're, like, a 23-year-old going for an 18-year-old and you don't think you're doing it for a malicious reason, probably still you should just kind of be assessing it, because people who are good for each other and who are going to foster a good relationship are going to be at a very similar level to each other in a very similar stage of life, a very similar, like, a 23-year-old, even me, who's nearly 20, has so many different priorities and different thoughts to me when I was 18.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that was less than 2 years ago now, but, like, so,
But this is also modern day specific. I'm not going to tell anyone that their parents were wrong because like there was a weird age gap.
Oh
there.
yeah, exactly. Like, that's
this
even
is.
different
I'm talking
because,
about
like,
the modern day.
you know,
I can't talk
everything's
about.
so accelerated in the modern days that
Yeah.
these 5 years of difference between age nowadays is pretty massive because of how much is accelerated and how much
technology, personalities,
like,
and just how everything.
even societal conditions have changed.
Oh
in
yeah,
a bit.
definitely.
Back in your parents, like when they were young, or even your grandparents, like
it was slower moving.
there was a lot of
on a
5 years to have a difference. 5 years of difference was not massive in terms of an 18-year-old woman probably would if she wasn't married, she'd probably be one of the later women to be married at 18.
Yeah,
Back,
I think maybe when our parents were young, maybe it was.
Not in our parent. Yeah,
it was like the mid early 20s.
Yeah, but at
Grandparents,
that time,
it would have been like 18.
grandparents. It was but so maybe your mum was if your mum was 25 getting married.
Yeah,
that was probably seen as
even nowadays it's not that weird to be married at 25.
Oh, it's not weird. But
if you get if you get together when you're 19, both 19, and you're both 25. That's a pretty good span.
Oh
to,
yeah, that's what I mean.
Relationship,
What I'm
fiance, then marriage, engaged. Sorry.
In terms of maybe in earlier periods of time, like an 18-year-old woman with maybe even a 30-year-old man, that's not amazing. No. But back then, you can't judge it fully too much in terms of.
Yeah, it was a different. It really was a different time.
18-year-old. That was one of the later periods of time for a woman, getting married in earlier stages.
Yeah, but
and then also so let's bring conversely 30, as well. So similar stages of life.
Let's bring it back to the modern day.
But so modern day, you're not going to be at a similar stage of life or a similar level or a similar pattern of thought and consideration for what's important to someone who's massively older or massively younger than you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different considerations that people have nowadays
also,
based on their age. That
18-year-olds nowadays have it's a different the system is the so-called system. It is a system. It is very different to how it treats 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
Now how it treated 18-year-olds.
Nowadays, you're either still in high school or you've just left high school. So you're either going to be going towards university, or you're going to be finishing your high school career, or you're going to be
going to TAFE,
a trade,
get a full-time job.
Maybe you've left in year 10 going towards TAFE or a trade. Either way, though,
there's a lot of establishment you have to start off with.
You're establishing yourself.
Because most people are actually finishing high school when they're 17 and 18 nowadays. That's actually not something that used to happen.
Yeah.
And that's why people have less life experience when they're 18. And that's why people are like, oh, Gen Z's so dumb. It's no, we just don't. We haven't had a chance to go out and do something.
Yeah, we're just not.
It took me until I was
21
to really have a good grasp on things. And now that I'm 23, I'm I still really don't know anything. And now, I think back to when I was 18, I really, really didn't know anything.
Yeah, exactly. And that sort of relates to, the modern day age gap is 18-year-olds nowadays. If they're just coming out of high school and, someone's 23 or something, you've been out of high school for 5 years. You've learned 5 years is a long time to learn.
You can finish your uni degree and go into 2 years of actual being a proper teacher.
Exactly. I'm 20 in September and I'm finishing my degree in August. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've had that 3 years between high school to now.
You do feel like a very different guy to when I first met you.
I've grown so much. I've learned so much about different things. I've even
so much more to learn. And same with myself. Exactly. I've done a lot, but I still don't know anything.
23-year-old me is going to be a completely more grown, more wisdom, more knowledge about different things.
I mean, there's videos of me when I was 20 on YouTube, and there's clips or there's pictures on Instagram and whatnot, and you see the difference between me at 20. Even now, I'm very
exactly. So you think about that. You think about if you're dating an 18-year-old, you're essentially dating yourself at 18 in a way.
Well, I think it's not. Well, just say. I think what to keep in consideration is what were you like at 18? What were you thinking at 18?
Yeah, exactly.
What would you do at 18 if
you
at 20?
Dating someone who's in the same level and the same considerations as
the dynamics of power.
Exactly. It's imbalanced. They're going to be most of the time a lot less experienced in love, and they're probably not going to be as critically thinking about the impacts of relationships, and they're probably going to be a lot more open in terms of they're going to be a lot less cautious and looking out for certain red flags.
Yeah, they're not.
And even if you're not like a genuinely bad person, you might still get yourself in this position where you're accidentally or inadvertently proliferating these bad,
Bad things.
bad habits or these bad sort of relationship sort of things because the other person isn't aware to keep you, in line or to keep you sort of in check, I guess.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fear with older people and all that kind of stuff, and I think as the ages go on, 20, it kind of becomes 20, maybe 21, maybe 19, and then it gets older, 23, maybe 24, maybe 25, maybe.
And as you get older, like age gap becomes less of an issue.
It becomes less and less as you get older, but definitely when you start off at the tail end of the teens, the 18 and 19, and then that's when it's really like, I think it has to be, you really have to be. You have to be quite insular age-wise, because you're not gonna. I just don't see it ending well for 18-year-olds trying to date 25-year-olds. Or
in relationships who have an age gap, who have worked out, is pretty.
They're way
low.
older. They're way older than us. They're already into the 40s.
The people who no, but I mean like our age. Like the people
our age,
who have had age gaps, who that have worked out. Compared to the people that they're worked out compared to not worked out is very different. So I'm not saying it doesn't work out, but 99 times out of 100 you're not going to have that like great experience.
Yeah, there's someone I'm thinking of that I just want an update. Is it? You know who I'm thinking of, the person with a notable age gap.
I'm just trying to remember at the moment. This is why we're a bit quiet, but
I don't know how to spell it.
Oh yes. I actually know nothing about that.
Okay.
But
that's what I'm concerned about.
I would imagine not.
I'd have to search them. See if they're around. Are they still around here?
I haven't seen them lately.
Oh, there you go.
But anyway, not many people that I know have had an age gap.
Ever lasted an age gap? No.
I
think someone I know just had a weird, like one of those relationships with an age gap, and I don't think it's worked out for them. I don't know what the situation there is though.
Well, if you're in a good, healthy like age gap relationship, we're not trying to
No, I'm not trying to disqualify it, but
it can work. But like you guys would probably even like if you're in an age gap that works, you guys are probably also aware that you're kind of in the statistical minority there. You know? It's not impossible, but it's harder and it's less likely, and it's going to require more understanding.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so let's recap this episode.
So I think we started off talking about like
chemicals,
testosterone, chemicals and stuff. I have a lot more knowledge that would probably be like necessary.
We might have to. Do we have an idea for the next one?
That's a great idea. Actually, you guys could give us an idea of like a future episode even.
All right. Yeah.
But we'll think about some future episodes. We talked about like red flags, so like love bombing,
red flags,
random lying about nothing, gaslighting, inconsistency, flippy floppy. We talked about green flags, like just being consistent, good communication, I guess.
Yeah, good communication. Yep.
We also just went on a bit of a talk about age gaps. We talked about love styles, like compatibility with that.
Yeah.
Communication, like it's very good to just communicate early if you can, and if you can't communicate early, to be somewhat understanding and that sort of thing.
Do you want to talk about like economics in the next one?
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, but if anyone has any ideas, any more to add on this relationship
or even any
stuff,
more questions.
Or if you have a question,
we could probably spend like 10 or 20 minutes in the next one looking for questions and answering.
We'll take questions. I think you could put up on your social media.
Yeah.
If people want to ask you questions personally, if you can answer them on here.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good idea. Yeah.
If they're more kind of personal, private, and kind of deeper questions, I wouldn't want questions that are like, "Here's your crash." Like I don't care about that.
If you guys have genuine questions, and you're comfortable on this forum, we'll just we'll
If you have
address them.
personal
And I'll-
stuff that you like, if you want to know who we are, like if you've just
Oh,
found this and you
exactly,
want to like
yeah.
ask us like, who are you guys? Like, why are you talking to us?
Yeah, and I'll post on my social media if anybody of my like friends has any questions for us to address in the thing
Yeah.
relating to any particular topic, I guess as
Yeah,
well.
but no worries. Okay, sounds good. This has been Forklift
And this has been Caterpillar. Thank you guys so much for watching another
and
episode of
listening
Uncle Sham.
too. See you guys in the next episode. Boom boom.
Shake the room.